Alright, so here's what I think Canon will be releasing between the spring and the summer. I think there will be a 6D Mark II. I think there will be a serious firmware update for the 5D Mark IV. And I think that we might see an upgrade to the C100. So speaking of the 6D Mark II, I think there's a couple of things to think about in particular. I think the number of AF points, I think the video, I think the tilty flippy touchscreen, I think dual pixel AF. So if you look at the 5D Mark III and the 6D, the original 6D, which is shooting on my 85 right there, it has 9 autofocus points, 20 megapixels, 4.5 frames per second, can shoot 1080 in 30p and 720 in 60p. It has fantastic dynamic range, and the center point has a -3 EV sensitivity. The 5D Mark III had 22 megapixels, 6 frames per second, 1080p, 720, 60. It had 61 AF points and dual card slots. The sensors were very similar in a lot of ways, but I think that the 6Ds actually had a little bit more dynamic range, which made it more appealing to me. So what am I expecting from the 6D Mark II? I think in order to kind of understand that, you got to look at the 5D Mark IV. The 5D Mark IV has 30 megapixels. It shoots 7 frames per second. It has 2 card slots. It has dual pixel AF. It has a touch screen. It shoots 4K in motion JPEG. With that as the base, where are we going to come down to get the right price point for the 6D so that it's not too feature-packed and thus more expensive than the 5D Mark IV? Well, I think that 6D's got to be 24 megapixels. You don't need 42, you don't need 50 on a regular basis. Autofocus points, I want at least 45, and I'm telling you I want at least 45 because that's how many the 77D, EOS M6, and the T7i all have. And if it doesn't have at least 45 cross-type autofocus points, I'm going to be very disappointed. I'm going to be very disappointed if it doesn't have dual pixel AF. I won't be too terribly disappointed if it doesn't have anything better for video than 1080p 60. I would love 1080p 120. I would love 4K. I'd love 4K in a usable file format. I don't expect it to happen. I don't expect dual card slots. I think that's a too pro feature to feature in the 6D. But I do think that it's time for the 6D to get upgraded to that tilty flippy touchscreen. I think that's the same, they're hitting the same market as the people that are buying the 80D, in my opinion. The difference is that it's full frame versus APS-C. And so I would love to see the 6D with a tilty flippy touchscreen with dual pixel autofocus in video. I think that could make it such an exceptionally popular camera. I know that there are a lot of people that use 6Ds for a lot of things. If you look at, I believe Norm from Tested has used up until recently a 6D for everything for years. And that's because it's just a fantastic camera. What could make it better is better video functionality, more autofocus points, better low light performance. I would honestly take 18 or still keep it at 20 megapixels if the low light performance or high ISO performance was increased. So there are kind of my thoughts on what Canon needs to do for the 6D. I think the price point needs to be at or around $2,000. I think for that money I would buy it immediately, unless they would make me destitute, in which case of course I would not. But I love my 6D and I absolutely want a better version of it. And I'm sure my partner would like to inherit my current one. 5D Mark IV firmware update. I think they're going to put in an update for a more usable file format for 4K. I think that's kind of the big one. Features in the C100 replacement. I think the C100 needs 4K. I think it needs better color space. I think it needs more dynamic range. I think Canon can't stay out of the 4K market like it really is doing without serious consequences, and it's going to start seeing those serious consequences here in 12 to 24 months if it doesn't get on its game. I think high frame rate video recording, it needs. I think better color depth. I mean, a lot of people own C100s because they're cheap and they want those better video functionalities, but there's a lot of people that are also going to Sony, and there's a lot of people that are going to Panasonic. There's a lot of people that are choosing manufacturers other than Canon for video-specific work because Canon isn't giving them what they need. Canon has fantastic color science, Canon makes fantastic sensors, but they're not giving the people that are buying their cameras oftentimes everything that they need. And I say that as a 3-time Canon camera body purchaser and 2-time Canon camera body owner and many-time Canon lens purchaser and owner. So I'm very biased towards Canon, but I am also very aware of their flaws, and I think that video is the big one. There was a press release or a video or something I saw recently that was saying, oh, I chose to go Nikon because I was talking to the Canon executives and they were like, oh, we're all about video. And the Nikon executive was like, we're very focused on still photography. And so they're like, oh, well, in that case, I got to go with Nikon because they'll give me, a photographer, all the features that I want and they'll focus on me, the photographer. But I think that that's completely unreasonable. I think every manufacturer needs to focus on all the features because they're being judged on all the features. You can't just say, I'm a stills company, I'm a video company. You can't do that unless you're Red or Ari or Blackmagic, Panavision. You can't do it. You gotta really be deep into that game, and that's why I really like what Sony's doing with their A7s, where it's a base, a resolution, and a sensitivity. Like, that makes a lot of sense, and Canon needs to start looking at the market and seeing what the market's doing, and not just the entry-level Rebel market, because the people that are spending the most money on Canon are not buying entry-level Rebels. They're buying higher-end products that Canon makes, and we're spending way more on their systems, and they need to support us much better than they are right now. So that's kind of a wrap on what I'm hoping for out of Canon between spring and summer. Hope you found it interesting. Please don't hesitate to like, comment, or subscribe. That like would really mean a lot to me. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I'll see you in the next one.